All right, I wanted to respond to this comment. Unfortunately, when I click on my video, the comment doesn't appear. Maybe it's too long, but I could see it in my own profile. And basically, what he's asking me is, so I mentioned the hadith where Ahmed ibn Hanbal says, "O servants of Allah, help me." Right. This is reported by Ibn Kathir, and I'm pretty sure it's very hard to deny the authenticity of this statement. And Hanbalis have used it before. So basically, what this guy asks is right, and he has this website here. Let's look at it. This is a Salafi website that says it's not shirk, right? Um, and let me just read it real quick. Okay, so basically, the summary of the answer of this article says, based on the above, we now know that Ahmed did not has an origin. Oh, what Ahmed did has an origin, right? Which is some hadith by Ibn Abbas with a Hasan chain of narrator, and it is not shirk because he sought help from the angels of Allah, who Allah created to guide the lost people. So it is a request that is Islamically permissible. First of all, I want to talk about. I just want to make it very clear that Wahhabism, Salafism, is based on ignorance, right? It's not based on scholarship. So even them going over whether it's Hasan or not, right? They don't know that in Ahmed's madhab, you can use a weak hadith and act on it. They never had an issue with that. So the idea that the grade of the hadith is any relevance here is just based on the fact that they denied the Hanbali madhab to begin with. Right? Another thing is they say that because that hadith allows you to call the angels, right, that it is permissible. I want to make it clear something, right? So let me pause it here. I'm going to mention a few things in this video. I want to start with this quote from Muhammad ibn Wahhab, which I showed in another video, but I want to show it again, right? He said in a letter, Muhammad ibn Wahhab, that jurisprudence for them is preoccupation of the book of so and so, right? Second, right? And the point is, they're followers of following the later scholars, not the original imams, right? These Hanbalis are among the least innovative madhabs, but and essentially what he's trying to say is that they're not following Ahmed ibn Hanbal, they're following the madhab which came, developed based on his methodology. And he was criticizing that, right? And he did this about every madhab, right? So you have to understand that Wahhabism is the denial of madhabs, right? In a sense, they're saying, oh, we have to reform it in our own way, which is nonsense, right? And I'm gonna give you more evidence, but that's where we're starting. So I want to start off also by showing you that in uh, Kitab al-Tawheed, right? Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, I'm not sure if it's Kitab al-Tawheed, but it's one of his books. He has the 10 nullifiers, right? And he says, right, he does not seek help from others, right, nor vow to others, neither to a close angel, right? And, right, so they're trying to justify that you can call to an angel. But it clearly says here uh, that this is shirk, right? This is their, the head of their movement, right? Basically, almost the level of Prophet Muhammad Abdul Wahhab saying, you cannot call to an angel, right? The idea that somehow it's okay because Ahmed did it, right? Is contradictory to everything else they say, right? So let's keep going. Let me pause it. Right, and here's another example. Uh, this is, I believe, fatwas of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he says, the monotheism of divinity is the devotion of worship to God alone on behalf of all creation, right? And then it says, but they make gods with him, such as the righteous angels, right? This is well known, and I'm going to keep showing you more, right? That essentially the angels were considered like gods beside God, right? To the pagans. And he's criticizing that. So it's obvious that he would not have considered this to be permissible. And I'm going to keep going. Here's a statement from Ibn Taymiyyah, Majmu' al-Fatawa, Volume 1, page 124. Right? And he says here, whoever makes angels and prophets intermediaries, right, uses the word wasilam, uses them as intercessors, and trusting them and asks them for benefits, right, he is a disbeliever, right? And the Ibn, oops, I don't know if I recorded that last part, so I'll just say it again. Um, what I wanted to say is that the Ibn Taymiyyah part is pretty clearly going against um, calling angels, right? Very clear. And then here's another statement from Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, where he says in the same book, the Book of Meaning, there is no God but God. I think it's a letter, actually. It says here, whoever calls on a prophet or an angel or delegates him or seeks help from him, he has left Islam, right? Pretty obvious. There's no really getting around that, right, for the Wahhabis. And I wanted to throw this in. This is well, actually the earliest tafsir we have is from Muqatil, and he talks a lot about how the angels were perceived as, kind of part of the pantheon in a way, right? And he says angels, that they're servants. Well, that's what we say, but he mentions how you know, they were daughters of God and whatnot, right? So why does this all happen, right? I think what you need to understand is, it's like I said, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rejected the madhabs. He rejected, in general, scholarship. That's what he was known for, right? That's what Wahhabism, all Salafism, Wahhabism, in a sense, is rooted in that. You have to understand that that was where the movement came about. In the year 1600, there's no Wahhabism. Suddenly he comes in and there's Wahhabism. Like, you have to understand how history works. The movement didn't exist. Suddenly a new sect is formed that's fighting all the other Muslims. I prove this clearly. It's not me proving it, it's just history. Only the Salafis don't understand how it works. But all of a sudden a whole movement is formed, and the whole point of this movement is to undermine the scholarship of Sunnis of the past, madhabs, like I showed you already. Essentially what he's saying is they're all wrong and I'm right. And here's a statement from a historian, Salim Al-Suhaib Wabila Al-Ala. I think that's the name of the book. It's basically a history book of the Hanbalis, right? And he talks about the father of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, right? And so let's see what he says about him. This should summarize everything, right? He studied fiqh with his father, the author that was famous. So he wrote I believe, a fiqh book that was the father of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, I believe, or no, the grandfather, right? He compels well-written books on legal issues, right? And then he died in that year. He's the father of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Okay, so that's his own father who did that. The founder of the movement whose sparks are prevalent in all walks of life. But there is a big difference between them. Muhammad has shown his preaching after the death of his father. Some few of those I've met have told me that people of knowledge who lived at the same time that the Sheikh Abdul Wahhab, that he was angry with his son for the reason that he would not care to learn the fiqh as his ancestors. And he sensed that something was going to happen to him blameworthy. And he said to the people, "What do you see as evil for Muhammad?" And what ended up happening happened according to the predestination of God. And the other, his son, Suleiman, right? We talk about Suleiman, who in the history books, he clearly fights against him. I'll just show you right now after this. Opposed to his preaching, and he refuted in a beautiful way by verses, right? And we know his book. We read it. It's mentioned in my book a few times. Very good arguments against it. And he goes on to say, he was careful to speak no scholar among other than Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, which is exactly what the Salafis do today, right? They only mention two scholars. Very clear that their foundation is built by Muhammad ibn Wahhab. You don't need to be a genius to figure that out, right? You only need to see that Muhammad ibn Wahhab united with the Saudis back in 1800, right? And they're still, the Wahhabi movement and the Saudis are still united today. Obviously, you don't have to be a genius to put all this together. And then he goes on to say, this was the name of it, right? And I have the book. There's an English translation of it. And Allah has preserved its evil and cunning from Muhammad ibn Wahhab, despite its terrible tyranny that horrified even the inhabitants of the distant lands, right? Because when someone contradicted and refuted him, he was unable to kill them in broad daylight. He sent someone to kill them in his bed on the marker at night, because he considered anyone infidel, anyone who disagreed with him, and he made this law killing lawful. It is said there was a fool in a village who used to hit anyone who faced him, even if he was armed. Then Muhammad ibn Wahhab, in order not to give this fool a sword, essentially he sent him to assassinate him, right? And I think that's about it. But you get the point, guys. And these are the history books written by the Wahhabis themselves. Unwan al-Majd, right? Essentially, killing and looting. And al-Saud, right? Back in 1800, took the camels, taking spoils of war from the Muslims, right? And they called themselves the Muslims, but they were fighting the Muslims, essentially meaning that those they were fighting were not Muslim in their eyes, right? You could see it here, right? And there's so much killing recorded in their own history books, right? They went to Kuwait, uh, they went to Hijaz, right? You could read all of this. This is in my second volume. I don't have to, I don't have to show you everything, but as you can see, Saud bin Abdul Aziz, right? What he does is he unites with him in this movement, and obviously they're still around today. And they were the ones who promoted Salafism and Wahhabism throughout the world. And what I'm trying to show you is that it was based on ignorance, right? Because he denied the madhabs. And his own father said that he didn't want to learn fiqh, right? He didn't want to learn because he thought he knew better. This is one of the statements from his brother Suleiman. He said, "When I tell my brother to accept the statements of the people of knowledge, he does the opposite. He makes it compulsory that the people should follow his own understanding. And when somebody opposes him, he calls him a disbeliever." Right? While my brother does not even possess one of the qualities of the people of Ijtihad, right? He does not even possess 1/10 of them. Yet he proceeds to open his mouth. And you have to understand, look, these are some of the categories of a mujtahid, right? While Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab was claiming to be one, right? While he had no real background to really claim, and Suleiman, right, makes a very good argument, right? He basically uses hadith such as this one. Verily, the shaitan has lost all hopes that the worshippers would ever worship him in the peninsula of Arabia, right? He uses hadiths to prove that shirk cannot return to Arabia, which, Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, the foundation of his ideas is that it has, right? And, it doesn't make any sense that he would repent and follow him. And so this is found in Tarikh Najd, another book written by the Wahhabis, right? It says that the people of Humayla apostated, and its judge was Suleiman, right? His own brother, the brother. They write this in their own history books, right? And so the Salafis today claim that he repented, but it doesn't make any sense, right? It's clear that they're having a war with each other. And on top of that, he wrote a whole book against him, and the arguments are very sound. There's no way that you would change your mind on that. He makes it very clear that a mujtahid is these 8 qualities, right? Which I just mentioned a minute ago, right? There's no way that he suddenly says, you know what, forget about all that. He is just mujtahid. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how these Salafis always think everybody would just repent. Like, you're literally fighting a war against him. Suddenly he's gonna be like, you know what, that mujtahid stuff, whatever, right? All the hadiths about how, you know, shirk can't return to Arabia. You know what? Suddenly, I'm not convinced. Like, he already heard his arguments and he responded to it in a whole book. What more could have happened other than maybe threatening his life to change his mind, right? So, anyways, yeah, that's my response. I don't know if maybe I didn't even fully address what you were saying, but I hope that I, for the most part, did respond, right? Basically, the key to understand is that they don't have a real madhab. They don't really have a methodology. They just say anything that they think makes sense in their head. That's it. Okay.